All right, welcome everybody to the 2024 Izzy Awards. Appreciate everyone that joined live today as we're going to reveal the favorites for the 2024 Irish Whiskey Society America Awards. I'm going to set it up at least at the beginning as we go through the categories with just the speaker view. There are a number of you on, but as you'll see in a moment, as we're going through the categories, it's just easier to not take up the screen with the gallery. Um, but the way it's going to work today is I know a number of you received the Izzy packages. So you'll be able to sample some of the favorites as we go along. Uh, I've spaced them out. They're a little bit more rapid fire in the beginning and then spaced out a little bit more, but there are only 12 categories plus the Izzy Legacy Award, which I'll talk about later. Um, but I encourage you to get multiple glasses if you haven't already. And that way you don't have to feel rushed to maybe finish a sample before we come upon the next one that we're going to try. I know some of you are old pros at this, so are probably already doing that. But I think the lineup, at least the ones that I picked amongst the winners or favorites, it's a good lineup, in my opinion. Uh, what I try to do is vary the different styles, distilleries, finishes, so we're not kind of drinking all the same thing. I also this year kind of did the added part of trying to avoid things that we've had before, either prior winners or things that we did in events in recent times, so that we weren't trying the same thing again. So that's my little tease for those of you who are trying to figure out what some of the favorites are. But we're going to go through each of the 12 categories. I'll first show the nominations to remind everyone. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I won't spend a ton of time. And then we'll show the favorite. Um, at the end of the 12 categories, we've got the Legacy Favorite Award, which is chosen by me. So we'll talk about that more. Last year, when we started the Legacy Award, Redbreast 12 was the favorite. So let me, for those of you, I think everybody knows me, but if you're new to the group chat, my name's Allan Dwyer. I'm president of the Irish Whiskey Society America. And this is kind of our big event of the year. It's our first one, kickoff 2025. And it's the one where, kind of with our tagline, celebrating Irish whiskey in the USA, we create an awards program that's a little irreverent, but it's not the typical one some of you may be used to. But we'll talk more about that as we go along. I think, so you've all participated in this, but just a quick rehash as we go through it if questions are coming up. Izzy, again, is just kind of like Grammy and Emmy and Oscar. It's just an abbreviation, IWSA. The candidates for the nominees, and there are 60 nominated Irish whiskeys today. The rules, which are just made up by me, to be perfectly blunt. The whiskey has to be sold in the USA to be eligible. So if you're wondering why certain things maybe didn't get nominated, that might be why. Another rule is that a whiskey can only be nominated once in a category. So there are a lot of whiskeys that could fall into 3 or 4 different categories tonight, but we limit it to one, and that spreads out the amount of nominees. That way you don't get one whiskey just dominating. But other than that, it's kind of a fun process. As you know, we don't take ourselves too seriously. Um, this is a people's choice fan favorite type of thing, so we don't do the blind sampling before and vote. We do the blind sampling after the fact. Um, and that's about it. Use the chat functions on so you can certainly ask questions as we go. Something comes up during it, or somebody has something they'd like to add to the conversation, please feel free. But otherwise, I want to kick things off with the first category. And for those of you who have the Izzy package, we're going to do whiskey number one. So they're numbered, and I'll give you just a heads up when we're at a category, which we're going to do. But if you'd like to pour whiskey number one, if you haven't already, the category that we're going to start out with is one that, again, I made up. Anybody who's traveled to Ireland, or even if you haven't, you're probably familiar with the full Irish breakfast, which is a plate full of a lot of different breakfast staples. Um, in whiskey terms, I like to coin full Irish for blends that contain all the styles. So I thought this was a good one to kick off with, because for those of you who might be new, just getting into Irish whiskey, kind of, it's a good way to learn a little bit about um, Irish whiskey styles of whiskeys. So Irish whiskey has three styles: single malt, which you're probably familiar with, single grain, and single pot still. The difference is single just means one distillery. Malt means 100% malted barley. Grain means 90 to 95% corn, and it's done in a column still or coffee still, as opposed to malts and pot stills, which are done typically in copper pot stills. So most of the blends that are out there are a blend. When you talk about a blend, it's really just combining two or three of the styles. Most of the blends are a combination of two. So, for example, Jameson would be a blend of pot still and grain, whereas Black Bush would be a blend of malt and grain. However, there are a number of them, and they're growing, that combine all three. And when you get one of those, that's what I like to call the full Irish. So these five nominees are all Irish whiskeys that combine all three types. And they're from a pretty good cross section. Busker's from Royal Oak down in Carlow, Dunville's up in the north from Ecklinville. Lost Irish is an independent brand, pretty extensive cask aging of the three types. There's a lot packed into that bottle. Paddy's is one of the torchbearers of the Irish whiskey industry. Pretty much, probably everyone's had it, seen it, from originally from Cork. It's now branched off independent, and Tullamore Dew, which is one of the largest selling Irish whiskeys in the world. So again, these are all blends. They all contain all three styles. And without further ado, we can talk more about them. But I want to let people, if you haven't already, have a drink. So I don't know if you want to, for those of you who like to gamble, anybody thinks they know what the favorite might be. And it's Tullamore Dew. So again, this was voted on by everyone, and this received the most. I don't know if anybody is surprised. I think everyone's probably had this. Again, I thought this was a good way to kind of kick off the the event this year. Nice kind of everyday blend, pretty popular, very one of the biggest selling Irish whiskeys. So again, this is Tullamore Dew has uh, their distillery in Tullamore. I'll be honest with you, I don't know to the extent that this is liquid from Tullamore. I think probably components might be. They were um, until the distillery was kind of restarted by William Grant several years ago. It was made combination of Middleton and Bushmills. Um, so as stuff comes of age at William Grant at the actual distillery, they'll be able to incorporate what they're making into the blend. I just don't know to the extent that that's happened completely at this point. But Sláinte everyone. And again, if you have multiple glasses, um, you can kind of it's going to kind of go every other category um, for the first half here, and then we'll slow down a little bit in terms of the sampling. But that's category number one. Favorite full Irish 2024, Tullamore Dew Original. Any questions, comments at this point? All right. We'll keep it moving. What we'll do too at the end, we will yeah, we'll get through the categories, but we will kind of have a post game analysis where we can get into more discussion about the process and the favorites and everything. But we'll just keep it moving at this point. So this is second category of the night. Favorite non-age statement Redbreast. So Redbreast tends to dominate the categories when we do it. So I thought, let's make it a little more difficult. We'll have a category of just Redbreast. And rather than do the age statements, they've been really expanding their range. So I decided be fun to let's let people pick amongst the different finishing that they've been doing. So they've been doing kind of a combination of things. They've been doing wine finish stuff with port, different sherries. And they've also been doing in the American series different oak finishes. So we got a combination of both. Got the Kentucky and Missouri oak as part of that series. And then as part of the Iberian series, we've got the Lustau, the PX, and the Tawny Port varieties. So this was, I think, the closest race. Had a kind of a clear leader for most of the process, and then was overtaken near the end. But all of these got votes. Not surprising. I think everybody has kind of a favorite Redbreast. But the one that took honors this year was the PX. So the Lustau was the leader for most of the process. Got to count all the votes, right, as they say. But this is one of the ones that came out just a couple years ago. I think Lustau was the most well known by people. Um, and I think the two American oak varieties, which are very good. Not as many people have tried them. They're limited editions, a little bit pricier too. Um, Hard to find the Kentucky at this point. The Missouri just came out in the last year. But it's good to see Redbreast, not resting on their laurels, trying to create different varieties. Um, and we have another Redbreast nominee coming up later on in the program. So I don't know if people are, if you want, you can keep score in terms of what you chose and what the overall um, favorites end up being. But the next category we're going to take a look at is the favorite port finish. And this is also whiskey number 2 for those with samples. So port type of wine that's used more and more these days in Irish whiskey finishing. So two of these whiskeys, really, well, I'd say three, but two of these have really been around a long time. Two of them are fairly new, but Ballyhoo's a single grain whiskey, sourced out of Connaught Distillery. Um, and the Liberator is the other one that's new, particularly to the States, just came to the States in the last year out of County Kerry, and out of the Wayward, and they do a lot of really use port quite a bit in all of the stuff that they've released so far. So it's great that they finally brought the whiskey to the States. It's only been around for a few years. This is very young whiskey still, but it's good to see them get to the States so people can try it. Clonakilty, this is a sourced whiskey. They just released their first whiskey this year that they distilled, but this is one of their initial releases, the port finish. So this has been around for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years now, that you can get in the States. And then the other two, Bushmills and Tyrconnell, have been around quite a while. Both single malts. And not to keep you in suspense, is the favorite, Bushmill 16. So not a shocker, I don't think. It's been around the longest. Bushmills is one of the most popular brands. It's a very good whiskey as well. So I can't say um, I was surprised by the outcome of this one. But Bushmills has been expanding their range as well the last few years, as well as different types of things. So this is part of their core range. It's basically 15 years in bourbon, and then full year of additional maturation in port. So I think a lot of you have probably had this at some point. If you haven't, um, Sláinte. Yeah, this is a 40% ABV single malt. And I think again, that's the core range of Bushmills is all 40%. What they've been doing lately is just a lot of really expanding their stuff, but mostly through limited editions like the Causeway collection, stuff like that, where they've upped the ABV and types of finishing and stuff like that. But their core range single malts 10 through well, I guess the 25 and 30 are probably part of the core range now too, but they've got quite a few and they all have a little bit of a different wine finish. So this one's um, pretty reasonably priced. You can find it for around $100. Um, once you get past the 16 year, I think the price really starts to ramp up. But this is, I think, a pretty good value, good quality whiskey, considering the price. Okay, we will keep it moving. So as I said, kind of up front, we don't take ourselves too seriously. Uh, and what I try to do each year, so it's not just, favorite blend, favorite malt, the categories can get a little boring, potentially, particularly since we're not doing blind sampling ahead for obvious reasons. Participants on the call today are from all over the country. But this is one that Ireland's known for a lot of things, castles being one. So why not combine castles and Irish whiskey? So these are 5 whiskeys that all can lay claim to a loose or direct affiliation with a castle. So if you're not familiar with some of these, but a lot of you probably have actually, if you haven't tried the whiskey, maybe you've visited the actual castle. But Bunratty's in Clare. This is actually a peated malt. I think they've got a couple different varieties. This one's the peated malt, non-age statement. The Clontarf is been around for a long time, independent label. We did an event, the Fighting Irish event, back in April, where we featured Clontarf. Kennedy Castle is probably the newest amongst these. Another independent label, the Castle's in Offaly. They have three uh, three varieties in their core range. And then we have the Pogue Castle. This is the 14-year single malt that's also in Clare. And we did an event with them in February, part of the Sweet Singles chocolate tasting. Then finally, Slane, which is in Meath Distillery there. So I think Slane's the only one of these that's actually a distillery. The others are all independent labels. And the favorite that was chosen among these was the Napoleon. So again, I wasn't surprised by this. I think a couple of these are less well known. Napoleon Castle's a pretty prominent brand. It's pretty popular. It's a good whiskey. Slane, I think, gave it a run for its money, but Napoleon's 14-year-old, is a marriage of sherry and bourbon finished whiskeys. Um, this one is 46% ABV, a little bit higher than the other two in the core range from Napoleon. And if people are wondering again, why did I choose some of the ones that I did to include as part of the sampling? We did an event with the Napoleon lineup in the last year or so. Figured, let's change it up again. So the ones that were picked had nothing to do with, one's better than the other or anything like that. I just wanted to mix it up a little bit and not do another event within the last calendar year that we already did. Okay, I'm just Catching up on the chat. Don't see any questions. Okay, moving on. Favorite grain Irish whiskey. So this would be whiskey number 3. And I'll give you a moment to kind of switch glasses or get your pours in. We'll talk about this a little bit. So I think we had a favorite grain category in year 1 of the Izzys. This is the 3rd annual. This lineup's a little bit different because I think the style's expanded over the last couple of years. You'll notice too that the category's favorite grain, not single grain. And that's really because of the first nominee, J.J. Corey, the Hanson. It's a vatting of grains from 2 different distilleries. So you can't call it a single grain, but wasn't going to eliminate it from the category. We'll just make the category favorite grain. But the others all are single grains. So they're coming from 1 distillery, Kilbeggan, the Method and Madness. W.G. O'Connell's been nominated both years. This is a 10-year, so it's the only age statement grain here. And Two Stacks is a new entry this year. They came out with their double barrel single malt and single grains in the last year or so, get independent bottler bonder. But this again is a style that a lot of the newer distilleries and independent labels are putting out because you can get access to it pretty easily, and because it can be produced much quicker, cheaper, and there's a lot you can do with it in terms of the finishing. So it's a good way to kind of differentiate, put out your own product, things like that. So again, this is number 3 in the Izzy sample package. And the favorite, I don't know if you've nosed it. Any guesses? No, let's see if Matt had it figured out. So this is the Method and Madness single grain favorite grain Irish whiskey. And so Method and Madness is the micro distillery down in Middleton. This was part of their 3 release original core range back, I don't know, what is it? What are we in 25 now? So it's probably 7 years now, maybe. Not that it's been in the States that long, but when it first came out. So this was their way of being innovative, both in terms of the way they bottled it and packaged it. But it allowed them to experiment with different wood types and finishes and things like that. All are very good. Since then, they've really kind of expanded mostly in terms of limited editions. They've put out at least 1 new limited edition every year with some wild finishing. But the core range still, is there. You can get them all here in the States. The single grain is matured in a Spanish oak, and it really provides a very interesting flavor profile. I think you might get like pencil shavings, which probably doesn't sound like something you'd want to maybe drink, but I think it really works. I think this is a worthy recipient of this. I'm not surprised that this one was chosen because it really is a good whiskey. So if you haven't had um, any of the Method and Madness uh, expressions, I'd say they're all really good. I mean, some of the limited editions are funkier than others. They've done stuff with mezcal and mulberry wood and Gariana, maple casks, just you name it, they've done it at this point. I'm sure they'll keep figuring out new stuff to do. Um, but you know, it's one of those, they're all kind of worth trying, particularly if you're looking for something a little bit different and unique. Unfortunately, you cannot get um, the majority of them in the States. You can only get really the core range, and I think the Gariana, you can get West Coast, you can get the Ryan malt version. So there's probably five or six maybe that you can get in the States. You'll know because they've got the unique bottling um, with both the labels and shape of the bottle and glass design that they do. Really makes it stand out on the shelf. Um, and again, it's really the idea behind it is to let them experiment and irony and everything. But when we say micro distillery, I guess it's all relative. It's a micro distillery from Middleton, but I believe at least it was. Everybody's expanding, so don't hold me to it. But the micro distillery is bigger than I think all the other distilleries in Ireland. So it's micro from Middleton. I don't know. There might be somebody that's bigger now, but um, for the most part, it's still a large operation. This one really has a unique taste from that Spanish oak. And if I didn't mention, that was at 46%, which all the core range Method and Madness are 46, and then a lot of the limited edition stuff are cast strength. All right, so again, you don't have to feel like you need to finish all these. Hopefully, you've got multiple glasses going. We are going to kind of slow it down a little bit more of a gap between for the next three. Um, so the next category is favorite Jameson. And why I wanted to include this is I think we tend to take Jameson for granted a little bit. It is the leading selling Irish whiskey back, when Ireland only had three operating distilleries not that long ago, 15 years ago. Um, Middleton and Jameson were the ones that, this is what you had. You had Bushmills, you had Jameson. At the time, if you go back to when we started 2010, Cooley was being the most innovative really at the time as the third distillery. Um, Redbreast had Redbreast 12. That was it. You had Powers Gold and Powers 12. You had Jameson 12. Those are kind of the um, leading or premium whiskeys that were out there. Um, and then everything really started to explode in, kind of after, say, 2011, 12. That's when everyone started to expand. Middleton really, started expand. They expanded the Redbreast range, the Powers range. That's when John's Lane came out. The Spot started to get released. And Jameson itself, started to release the beer finishes. They got rid of the gold and the 12-year. And one of the biggest ones that, came out was the Black Barrel. That was kind of a big deal at the time when we were first getting going, doing tastings in pubs. Um, so again, part of this idea on this was, a lot of the focus and attention is on all the new distilleries and everything that's coming out these days, but didn't want to forget that, who's kind of responsible for carrying the industry um, for those lean years. So that's why we said let's do a favorite Jameson that you can get here in the States. And the chosen was Black Barrel. This might have been the biggest runaway favorite in terms of vote getting. Not surprised, it's one of the best selling as well. But this was actually a pretty big deal when it came out because at the time it was one of the first, I think now everybody's like every week there's a new whiskey coming out. So maybe you're kind of used to that. But if you go back to like 2010, 11, 12, it was real slim pickings. And this came out, and they actually did the release in the States. It released in New York. And I remember we went and we got a couple bottles of it. We just kind of like drove, met halfway, were able to get our hands on a couple bottles and actually did it in a pub tasting that we were doing at the time. And it was a big deal. And I think everybody liked it. It's been around for a dozen years now or so. Um, Bottle labels changed from the original, but it's a pretty affordable priced Jameson that gets the additional charred finishing. I think most people would probably say that they think it's a step up from the regular original Jameson. Um, so again, not a shocker that this was the pick. All right. Next category. Um, Again, because Middleton tends to dominate because they're they're really good, but they've been around for a long time. So we wanted to recognize, and again, part of the whole idea of the Izzys is to expand the appreciation of Irish whiskey and get things more recognized. Um, the pot still category, which has been dominated by Middleton. They're the ones responsible for all the redbreast, the powers, the spots. But it is the quintessential Irish whiskey style. The blend of malted and unmalted barley. That's what the single pot still category is. And with now over 40 distilleries, a large number of them are producing pot stills. So we wanted to recognize it. So these are all single pot stills that are not produced at Middleton. So kind of a newly created category. So you're probably familiar with the majority of these. Clonakilty, we did an event for the US launch this year. It just came out. Drumshambo came out a few years back. That's from the Shed Distillery. Kilbeggan, oldest distillery in Ireland. That's been on the market now for probably 6 years. Busker from Royal Oak's been out since probably 21, I want to say. And Ballykeefe, their expression, they're much smaller farm distillery. So that one probably doesn't have as wide distribution as someone like a Kilbeggan maybe. But that's been now on the market for the last, I want to say, about 2 years. So it's exciting, to see that they've got Middleton obviously has a big head start on everybody, but it's good to see others, um, entering the category. There's these five nominees. There's plenty others. Dingle's got an expression or has limited edition expressions, Teeling as well. So there are others that are also in the category. So it's really good to see the breadth expanding. This one was not included for the sample pack. And the main reason for that was because the favorite chosen was Clonakilty. And we just did an event with them. in September? Can't remember now, but we did an event to launch this release. It came out in May um, in Ireland, made it to the States August timeframe, and I think we did the event in September with Sean Scully. Um, this is, I think, a great entry into the category. Um, but again, didn't want to double up since we just did this tasting, since there are plenty of others we can do as part of this. But if you haven't got your hands on a bottle of this, I encourage you to do so. And Tim beat me to it. So he didn't waste his trip when he went to Oregon, apparently. So good for you, Tim. Yeah. What are brothers for, right, Renee? All right.
I shared at Christmas.
Okay, so I think we have, I don't know, I can't keep track. We've got through at least half the categories, I want to say. Um, we've done, and we've done three um, of the samples. So we've got some of my personal favorite categories coming up. One of the ones I like every year. And I think for the most part, if you were to look, I'd say, dozen to 14 categories each year. And there's really only a couple that we repeat, this being one of them. And one of the reasons we repeat this category is because by the very nature of it, you're going to get 5 different nominees every year. So this is favorite new. Um, so it's kind of a fun category. I think the challenge with this in some cases is because it's the new stuff, not everybody's tried it or tried all of them. So it makes it maybe a little tougher on the voting. But if you're not familiar with these, two of them are from Middleton. The Gold Spot 13 came out, I want to say in May. Redbreast 18 came out around September timeframe. So that's the latest addition to the Redbreast lineup. Killarney from that distillery in County Kerry. This is still a sourced premium blend. It's actually very good. Um, I know it was kind of released prominently in the Chicago area. So if you're in that area, you should be able to find it. From County Galway, the Oosh, which that's how you pronounce that. It's one of the few things, it's one of the things I learned along the way because I butchered it the first few months I was drinking it. But that's a um, triple blend. Got a little peat in it as well. So that's definitely worth checking out if you get your hands on a bottle. That's from the Ahascra distillery in Galway. And then finally, the Waterford Cuvée single malt. This was the core American or USA release, very beginning of 24. I think most of you probably heard the news of what's happening at Waterford. Um, but so they've run into some difficulties, but hopefully that all works out. I think they kind of launched right as COVID hit, and but you can always tell the Waterford product on the shelf with the blue bottling. This one has the mosaic design label. Um, we did a review of this um, during 24, so it's on the website if anyone's interested, if you didn't catch that when we did it. Um, but so these are only 5. There were a number of other releases. Some of them are nominated in other categories tonight. Um, this I should have mentioned because I think I forgot. This is actually whiskey number 4. And the favorite new Irish whiskey released in the USA in 24 is Redbreast 18. So again, wasn't shocked by this. It was not a runaway winner. Um, partly wasn't sure how this would do because it had only been out a month or two before we started voting. But the name recognition might have swayed some voters too, even if you hadn't necessarily tried it. But partly too, again, I told you up front in creating this lineup amongst, so I have to kind of wait and see what gets chosen. And then, but I thought I always like to include the new category because I know a lot of people maybe haven't tried the new ones yet. So there's certain categories I like to include in the lineup. And so if you haven't tried this, did a review for December. I think it was in the newsletter last month. It's on all the reviews are on the website. But this is the latest addition to the Redbreast permanent lineup. So it slides in between the 15 and 21. Other than the age difference, probably the other thing that distinguishes this is the use of cream sherry casks in the maturation process. So the liquid itself was matured a little bit differently than some of the other expressions. Um, so it gives the whole idea of the Christmas cake whiskey. I think this one definitely fits the bill with the cream sherry component. One of the things that I learned um, when this came out, because I hadn't educated myself on that, but just what cream sherry really was, because I don't know, didn't have a grandmother that drank it, I guess. But other than that, kind of just had a different idea of what it was. But really, all it is a combination of um, cherries. So there's no cream element to it. It's really, if you think it's like Oloroso and PX combined, in the wine process. Um, and as I think was written about in the review that we did, a lot of Irish whiskeys are, using PX and Oloroso and they just don't call it cream sherry. So probably required someone like Middleton because I think there was a stigma against it. The idea of what cream sherry was, where people just didn't understand it. But really, that's a real simplistic way to think about it. It's got the elements of the sweet PX as well as the Oloroso that Redbreast is known for, that nuttiness. Um, but well, I know Hank, I know you're a big cream sherry drinker to this day, so probably the one cornering the market on. But yeah. Anyway, I think once people drink it and then realize maybe more what it is, what it isn't, realize that maybe a lot of stuff they've liked along the way is kind of the same thing in terms of the components. Um, that stigma will maybe dissipate a little bit, but that's kind of without getting too much into the weeds on all this stuff. It's a good whiskey. Um, if you're a fan of Redbreast, I think you'll enjoy this one. The biggest probably the biggest roadblock to this um, is the price point for some. Um, and with it being new, it came out pretty pricey. Um, don't hold me to this, but anyone that's following what's kind of going on in the world and in whiskey in general, both here in the US as well as overseas, there's arguably a slowdown happening, um, some price adjustments, and I think more may be to come. So wouldn't be shocked to see some of the elevated pricing start to come down a little bit. Some of the stores try to move product, and this isn't just Irish. It's really happening in the bourbon world too. Um, a lot of reduced production going on. But one of the areas that's taken the biggest hit is the premium part of the market. So the pricier bottles are not moving like they were a few years ago. So it'll be interesting to see if we see any kind of adjustment in some of the pricing, particularly with Middleton, which really ramped up pricing about a year or so ago. But I'm enjoying this in a redbreast glass. I don't know if it makes it taste better or not, but helps me differentiate when I've got all these bottles and glasses in front of me. So I don't know how, I know some of you have mentioned in the chat that you're trying it for the first time today, so hopefully you're enjoying it. But again, that was part of it. I didn't want to, I figured that might be the case. So I wanted to include it in the lineup. Um, Probably wouldn't be an Izzy Awards if we didn't have Redbreast taking some honor. Seems to be one of the consistent themes the last few years. Um, but so I'll let you kind of still savor that one. A few more to go. Um, so we've done, we've had a pretty good representation from Middleton, not shocking. Um, Last two we've tried, in fact, have been from out of there, but there are certainly other makers we want to acknowledge. Teeling has been had many nominees the last couple of years, um, but thought it would be good to include a category dedicated just to Teeling Distillery, and went back to the roots, so to speak. So Teeling, I don't know, it's coming up on close to 10 years this year, being in operation now in Dublin. But when they first started out and they were getting the distillery going, um, they had their core range, which was all sourced at the time. Um, so I thought it would be a good idea. Let's recognize kind of where they came from, their origins. They get a lot of press these days because they're doing so much with super aged premium single malts, their Wonders of Wood series, a lot of different wine finishes. So lots of stuff, very innovative um, whiskey makers. But this is their original core range lineup. Um, and, again, they had the three styles in a blend. So you had the single grain, the single malt, single pot still, um, the blend. To be fair, though, the original three were the single grain, the single malt, which is a 5 cask finish, and the small batch blend, which was a rum finished. They expanded the core range first with the single pot still. They were the first new single pot still on the market, other than Middleton, I believe. And then most recently, they added to the core range with a peated single malt, which is the Black Pits. Um, so it was going to be interesting. I think this one split the vote quite a bit because everyone kind of has their favorite. I was a little surprised too because for a while, um, the one that was in the lead ended up getting caught in the end. But I was a little surprised by the two that got the most votes out of this lineup. But the favorite in the end was the single pot still. And the one that it really beat out was Black Pits. which probably neither of which would have been the ones I thought would have garnered the most votes, just because, um, one being peated can be polarizing, so again, broad popularity contest kind of thing. But the single pot still took home the favorite teeling out of the core lineup for 2024. So congratulations. Um, so this is their core range pot still. They've got dozens of others that have been done in various woods and wines. So their Wonders of Wood series, and they've done a chestnut in the pot still. Um, but yeah, I think the question, I think part of this, when this first came out, it was only a 3-year whiskey, um, and it was met with mixed reviews, I guess would be the best way to put it. And that was, again, as we kind of go on this journey, so to speak, a lot of the stuff that's been coming out is with these new distilleries is going to be a little polarizing, because 90% of what people drank, if you're into Irish whiskey for so long, was coming from two distilleries, basically. I mean, there were three, but you weren't getting sourcing. Most of you were getting sourcing from Cooley, and Middleton was kind of dominating, particularly the pot still. So you had kind of, tough lead in there, right? You had Redbreast and Powers and the Spots. And then here came a new entry, 3-year-old. It was a big deal when it came out because it was the first new pot still out of Dublin. And again, it was young. And I think most people agree that pot still needs 6, 7 years probably. So I think someone asked, how it is. I think, all the Wonders of Woods, if you've had any of those, it's their stuff. So I think if you didn't think it was great when it first came out, I'd give it another shot at this point. Um, because again, single pot still is a great style, and we're seeing more and more come from these other distilleries. A lot of people, maybe if they tried it in the last year or two for the first time, they were getting, the more aged stuff at this point. So maybe didn't have that um, impression from when it first came out, when it was only 3 years old. But I think you're going to get that a lot with, or maybe some of you have gotten that with other releases, from just other new whiskey makers that have put stuff out there as their first release. But I think a lot of what's happened is because of that, you have seen some really delay putting stuff out there, because they don't want that first impression to be mixed or negative. It's actually, in some respects, making it tougher too, because you've got others. I would argue like Ecklinville is kind of maybe a victim of their own success with their source single malts. Um, they seem reluctant to put out their own stuff. Um, and you hear things, but you wonder, like, are they a little reluctant because the expectation is going to be so high, because with the Dunville's brand and all the awards they've been winning, if they put out their own stuff. I know they put out their own stuff in the last year, but I'm talking about a core release widely distributed, because they definitely have the stock at this point, because they were one of the first distilleries in production of the newer ones. So I think that might be part of it. People are a little reluctant to put out either young stuff, or if they're really popular with their source stuff, they've got to be careful. But in any case, um, we'll move along. And again, I giving you a chance to savor the Redbreast and the others. So before we get to the fifth whiskey. So this next category, again, having fun with stuff. So this is the favorite animal kingdom, which is just basically simply referencing whiskeys that have an animal of some kind as their um, brand logo. So I think some of you are probably familiar with a few of these at least. Dead rabbit, um, obvious why that's an animal kingdom one, I think. Flying tumbler, the bird, the specific bird is one that travels far from home and then returns. That's a Carlo independent label that some of you, they have a few different types at this point. Limavady is the single malt, single cask independent bottle. They're working on bringing a distillery into Northern Ireland, but it's still a few years away. Um, but that's a nice whiskey if you get a chance to have it. PX finish on that. Natterjack, the toad, the Irish toad, has three different types in their core in their range, two of which are nominated tonight. And then Triple Dog, which did a review of in the summer. That's a very interesting blend. I think it launched in Texas here in the States. It's for the U.S. market. I don't think you can get it in Ireland. And you can check out that review on our website that we did. But the favorite in this category was Dead Rabbit. So this one wasn't included in the packet. Did the Fighting Irish event back in April, and this was included in that. So didn't want to double up in the same year. But this is a great little blend. 5 years, Dublin Liberties distillery, done for the pub in New York, which now is expanded to other markets. But used to virgin oak finishing. Again, this one has a long history. The Dead Rabbits in New York, the pub. So it made sense that they would have a whiskey made for them, and ones that's been around. So it's easier to get your hands on this now. But then it's probably why it won favorite. Animal Kingdom, because I think people have had a chance to try it and they know it's pretty good. Okay. This is favorite limited edition, one of my favorite categories. Again, this is, I think, one of the other of the two that tend to repeat each year. That's because, again, it's going to end up with 5 new nominees because it's limited edition. So they won't tend to repeat. This is whiskey number 5. I'll take a moment to just go through the nominees because, again, I find this to be one of the more interesting categories. But so there were 2 tequila finish, which is, getting more use, I would say, in finishing. The Bushmills 12, which came out beginning of 24, was a special premium reserve series they did. So it's a 12-year single malt, higher ABV than their typical single malt core stuff with the tequila finishing. And then the Writer's Tears also used tequila. What really made that one stand out is that's a single pot still. I think the only one that at the time was done with tequila. So those were interesting. We just were looking at Natterjack. This is the other Natterjack nominee. This one is known as the Mistake. Forgot about or lost some barrels in the back of the warehouse, and they use virgin oak, and it got an extra year of maturation than they typically would do in their regular stuff, and they put it out there. So if you've had this, you get a lot of wood on the finish. The Connaught Neoc was done as a USA exclusive limited release. We had that available to members back in May. That was kind of in response to they won Best Whiskey a year earlier from their distillery reserve release, and there were a lot of American investment in that distillery. They couldn't get their hands on that bottle, so this was kind of put out. Wasn't exactly the same, but done to to kind of make it a US exclusive so that people here could get a bottle. So that was made available to members kind of exclusively back in May. And then Dingle, this is part of their Celtic Wheel the Year series on Ara. And I'll only say that maybe once because even the people at Dingle disagree on how to pronounce all the different releases. But I can talk more about that because, again, this is number 5, but this was the chosen favorite limited edition. So more on this as we pour and sample. So I think I mentioned this is the 6th in the series. They just finished up the series around the holidays with the last release, which was for Wren's Day, which was a single pot still. So they had done like 9 in total when all was said and done. But not all of them made their way to the States. This one you can still get here. There's a couple that are available here in the States. A lot of them are in California because that's where their distributor, Hoteling, is. But they basically did either a single malt or a single pot still. They used a lot of the same cask finishing. So like they have Muscatel finish in the Samhain and in the Drolin. They just kind of switched the style, but used the same cask type. This one did not get multiple styling. Like this is the single malt in a Cab Sauvignon finish. So there isn't a single pot still in the series with this cask finish. But those of you who are Dingle fans, you definitely get the Dingle note on this. These are all everything in the Celtic series was either at 50.5% for the single malts and 52.5% for the single pot stills. So they brought them at higher ABVs and their batch series stuff that they had done before, as well as the core expression. I think a lot of people, kind of, when I've talked to them, they said, why don't you do some stuff at higher strength? So they did the whole series like that. And a lot of really great releases in this series. Again, you might find that a touch of water tones this one down a little bit, opens it up a bit. This is definitely higher ABV than the stuff we've been sampling so far. But this series was really interesting. They had a what do they do? They had the Widow Jane finishing. They had a couple of Muscatel finishes, a port, a rum. This is number 5 again. If you have the sample pack. Again, I think you can still, I know it's available in a lot of the California stores, as I mentioned. um, as well as in Ireland if you're traveling. You can get a lot of the ones that are initial ones, um, like the Samhain, Bealtaine, those are tougher to find. Those sold out in Ireland. The latest one is the single pot still that just came out. That one's, still available. Hasn't come to the States. I don't know if it will or not. Um, I'll talk to Dingle in a couple weeks and try to get a sense of if the last couple of releases are going to come here or not. But I think the other thing to look forward to at Dingle for 25 is a release, Core Expression single pot still release. Yeah, good to see Dingle getting recognized. Um, again, part of the whole idea of this too is to expand recognition. So any of you who remember the first year we did the Izzys, there were a lot of dominated by Middleton. We tried to really change up the categories last year to bring in some of the newer distilleries and whiskey makers, and I think that worked. We got a lot of the smaller craft distilleries recognized. But I think that's always the challenge, particularly here in the States where they're trying to get, the new product on the shelves when you have places like Bushmills and Middleton that have, you know, decades or century head start kind of thing. So yeah, we have one whiskey left in the sample, and we have one category left out of the 12 nominated categories. Um, so the last category, this is not number 6. Number 6 is the legacy. But before we get to that, this is the last category that you voted on. And it's favorite Madeira finish. So I think last year we did favorite rum finish and favorite rye finish. And then this year we've done favorite port and now favorite Madeira. Mix it up. But again, these are, I think for the most part, a couple of these are pretty recognizable. A couple are brand new. So I think, Bushmills and Tyrconnell have been around for quite a while. They're both aged single malts, finished in Madeira. Some of the newer kids on the block, for Collins, 15-year-old, that's a single grain, so it's an aged grain. With the Madeira finish came out beginning of 24. Uh, the Glendalough, they've been around for, I don't know, dozen years anyway. Um, but again, it's another single cask, single grain Madeira finished whiskey. A lot of people are familiar with the Glendalough stuff. And then Dunbrody, that's probably the newest independent um, brand that came out. I want to say at least in the States in 24. Um, but it's kind of an interest. I don't know if that one's probably the one that's least known, least tried. But the mash bill in that one is 50% barley with corn and rye blend, and then Madeira finishing. So kind of interesting. Might be worth picking up if you can see it in your market. But out of these, I think the chosen favorite, which I was kind of glad to see, mild surprise from my perspective. Um, and that was the Tyrconnell single malt 10-year. So I was glad to see this. I kind of thought another one would have taken the prize, so to speak. But good to see some love for Tyrconnell. This was Again, Cooley, this is a Cooley product. When it came out, they recreated this brand. This used to be one of the best-selling Irish whiskeys back in the day before Prohibition and everything got shut down. But they recreated the brand, and when they put these out, they had their non-age statement single malt, but then they did the 10-year series, and these have been around for, this was one of the first things that, was available back even in like 2010 when we started. You could get the port, the Madeira, and the sherry 10-year Tyrconnell single malts, double distilled, um, which was, a big deal at the time because um, Cooley was the one putting out new stuff, really, before the explosion. People kind of maybe, I don't know if you take it for granted, but like Bushmills has been putting out a ton of stuff the last few years, but they didn't do anything really until Diageo sold them. But at least until like 2015, you just had the core range Bushmills. That was it. And even Middleton, until they released Black Barrel and then John's Lane from Powers, you had kind of the core range there. So when all these new distilleries started popping up, it kind of, right, Jameson lifted up everybody. And then when all these other ones finally started doing stuff, it kind of Bushmills and Jameson followed up and they started putting out stuff too. So you've had a real run of stuff. But this was kind of, they were the ones putting out these wine finished stuff before Teeling. Nice to see this one that I'm sure a lot of you've had this. It's probably why it was chosen favorite because it's been around for a long time. Um, but so yeah, I was kind of glad to see Tyrconnell get a little bit of love. Okay, so those are the favorites in the 12 categories available for voting. That brings us to the legacy favorite. So here's kind of what this is. It has to be, it's something that has had a significant impact on the industry, be it the history, the growth, the popularity. There's going to be something special about this in some way. Um, and what I decided this year, this is actually a former two-time Izzy winner. It's also your whiskey number 6. And not to build the suspense anymore, but the 2024 legacy favorite is Connemara. So I do want to spend a few minutes talking about this, why it was chosen. But we just were talking about Tyrconnell a little bit. So again, for those of us that have been involved with this, since the beginning, I'll call it. So we started in 2010, um, and that was again, you had Cooley, Middleton, Bushmills at that point. Um, and Cooley was the innovator at the time. So they were doing things differently than had been done. Double distilled, everything else prior to that was triple distilled. Um, the and they were also bringing back some of these brands like Tyrconnell that had gone away during Prohibition. Um, But what else, I think made this stand out? So when this came out in '99, Cooley had already been around for a decade at that point. But this was the only double distilled peated single malt out there, Irish, 40% ABV. A little bit difference of people that really were into peat, the Scotch, maybe had been used to really heavy peated stuff. This one was light by those standards, 15 ppms, non-age statement. but it was 4 to 8 year old malts in a bourbon cask maturation. Um, and those of you that are fans of Galway, Connemara is out in the Galway region where if you visit it to this day, you can still find people only speaking Gaelic, where a lot of peated whiskey was made back in the day. So they named it and created this brand called Connemara. And for 20 plus years, this was pretty much the torchbearer for peated Irish whiskey. Um, you had a couple of stuff, um, along the way, like in Ireland, you could get Locks, which was another Cooley product that didn't get a lot of global distribution because at the time, I think what I heard is because it had an English name, they didn't think they could sell it as an Irish whiskey. Um, You had some independent brands that Cooley did here in the States, like anyone that remembers the original Michael Collins. That was a very lightly peated. Um, but for the most part, this was it for the longest time until all these new distilleries came along and started putting stuff out. So now it's becoming more and more common. You got Black Pits, which we saw earlier tonight. Um, but a lot of the newer distilleries are experimenting with peat. And you're going to see more and more releases coming. Two Stacks as an independent bottler doing stuff with peat. So I know peat can be polarizing, but and if this is the only peated whiskey maybe that you've had and you don't like it, um, I would say still try some of the newer stuff that are actually using Irish peat because does not use Irish peat. But I thought it was really worth recognizing what Cooley did at the time, because I remember they were going up against Bushmills and Middleton, and how do they carve out a niche for themselves? And in that world, so they were just doing a lot of things different between the double distilling and finishing. They put out the single grain as its own product, which at the time was kind of unheard of for Irish because it was just used for blending. So a lot of different things. Now Connemara, as I'm pouring this into my Connemara glass, again, helps me keep them all straight. But fans of Connemara know that the range is expanded and contracted over the years. So it's been around for 25 years now. But there's a 12-year expression. There was a 22-year-old expression. A lot of single cask releases. You can still find a lot of these if you go to Celtic Whiskey Bar in Killarney. They have a lot of the older Connemara's still available where you can sample. But it's a brand that stood the test of time for, really led the way. So and I think, people obviously do like it because when we've done favorite peated Irish whiskey the last couple of years, this one has won both times. So now again, they've had a head start on everybody, but I think generally speaking, people do think it's a good whiskey. I think it's a good introduction to peat for Irish whiskey drinkers. If you're trying to jump right into some of the stuff from Isle, Scotch, that's going to be overwhelming probably. So it's a good way to kind of get into the category. Um, and part of it too with the so wanted to include this. I think we'll probably always include the legacy in the lineup. Peated, you had a pot still, a single grain, different finishes, things like that. So as I said up front, I thought I was pretty happy with the lineup that I was able to create from what the chosen favorites were. Is anybody trying Connemara for the first time? So I don't know if people are peated whiskey drinkers, You might find this one, um, to be maybe underwhelming if you're big Scotch whiskey drinkers, but this is it's very nicely balanced. Again, I think what the Irish whiskey industry needs to do as far as peat goes is not try to be, Scotch. Try to carve out their own area and get people interested in it. And I think, Teeling's done a pretty good job with their black pits, I think. And some of the newer distilleries that haven't brought the product yet to the States, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by what you can do with some of the peated stuff. Because it all is different too, particularly if they're using Irish peat, which I think in Donegal and Galway, like places like Mickle, are able to do. Um, so it's definitely worth giving it a try. And I kind of knew um, I wanted to go this way this year by picking this one as the legacy favorite this year. So I didn't include favorite peated whiskey as a category purposely. Probably bring that back, next year maybe. Particularly as the category keeps expanding with some of the other brands offering stuff, bringing it to the States, hopefully. But so so what we'll do now is that, so we've gone through the 12 categories. Um, let you know what the 12 chosen favorites were for 24, as well as the legacy recipient, which is Connemara Original. So congratulations to all the favorites. And what we'll do now is we'll kind of do a post awards wrap up show for those of you that can stick around, finish your whiskeys, expand what we're sampling, but give you an opportunity to maybe talk about some of the categories or the chosen favorites or whatever tickles your fancy, as they might say. But so what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen. We can kind of expand the gallery a little bit and open it up for more discussion in addition to the chat function. Um, so good to see some familiar faces. So hopefully you enjoyed the lineup. Anybody have anything that they were surprised maybe was the chosen favorite out of the group?
Tell them we're due.
Yeah. What?
I just think it's basic, and my opinion, I thought there were more flavor profiles with a couple of the other ones, like the Busker. I just thought took me a little surprise that Tullamore actually won that one.
Yeah, I think part of it too, remember, is this is really kind of a people's choice
Mm-hmm.
award
100%.
type thing. So that is, at one point that was the number. It might still be. I haven't seen recent numbers, but that was the number two selling Irish whiskey in the world. So you kind of have that going for you. It's the same thing with so I know what you're saying. Like Lost Irish whiskey is, has a much more unique profile to it too. But a lot of people probably haven't had it because it doesn't have the distribution. So part of the challenge, I think, with this still too is a lot of states don't get stuff. But I think you can pretty much find Tullamore Dew in any liquor store around the country.
Fair.
Any other people's favorites that didn't take home the category that maybe they were a little surprised about? everybody had the same scorecard. Y'all chose the winners. I was thinking of doing a little, because I know I'm tearing people away from NFL football playoffs on a Sunday, but so I thought if any of you were like big time, football gamblers, I'd create like a parlay where see who could pick the most winners.
Oh, Alan, there's only one football game left in the year that matters right now, anyway.
OH.
I tend to agree, but any of you breaking your dry January to participate
Technically,
today?
yes, but when I started my dry January, I had an out for this for whiskey and then a tasting I'm hosting on the 25th. So it was planned to break it for this, but my Guinness is non-alcoholic, so I am sticking to the intent of dry January.
All right.
I didn't add any ice cubes to my whiskey, if that counts.
Those two words don't exist for me.
Oh my.
I did hear an amusing story about the Connemara when they started. It was in one of Laurie's Whiskey Chats podcasts, because my assumption was always the peat or the barley was malted in Scotland. But apparently the first batches, they had the peated barley malted in Ireland until the malting companies got angry notifications from brewers like Guinness who were going, what's this carrying over into our malt? Please stop using peat if you want to continue doing business with us. And then they switched over to Scotland. So maybe some of the very, very early Connemara had Irish peat in it.
Interesting. But given the state of labeling and everything back then, you'd probably
you'd never
know. Yeah. But maybe some of those single cask bottlings too.
I don't imagine it was those. It nearly sounded like it was just their original runs.
Okay.
Because I think the single cask bottlings came later.
Yeah. I think I like the 22-year-old that they did.
That was very nice. Yep.
But part of it too, it was an effort, just the fact that they did it at a time when no one else was doing peated, I think, and they've been able to kind of keep it in the lineup and have it be popular for a quarter century.
That's what I appreciate about events like this, because it brings me back to trying stuff I don't necessarily go out of my way to buy.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the last time I bought or had just a regular Connemara. But then when you have it, you go, yep, this is still good. I should keep drinking this. So thank you.
Yeah, I think part of it too, like I was glad some of the outcomes, like Tyrconnell got out, because I think the same would go for some of the others, Tullamore Dew, Tyrconnell, you maybe not necessarily, like if you're into getting the next newest thing that comes out, sometimes and same thing with Jameson. So that's why I tried to introduce some of those categories this year, just to kind of take a step back and remember some of the stuff where we came from for what it's worth. But I think a lot of people we'll have to do a category of brands that no longer exist that we wish did. So I think I saw in the chat somebody was lamenting not being able to get Jameson 12 anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is Tyrconnell owned by the
Matt, I
same
assume you're not
Japanese
in
company?
California, are you?
Pardon?
I was asking Matt if he's in California or not, because he'd
No,
asked.
sir.
Okay,
No, I'm
cool.
in Texas.
Okay, there was a liquor store near me in Northern California that, at least as of last year, still had a number of bottles of the Jameson 12.
Wow.
They obviously don't turn stuff over much and or clear their shelves.
No, and they hadn't price gouged on that one. They had on some of the other stuff, because they had a Jameson Gold that was 300, and they were one of the, we have a blue spot, but it's $300.
A lot of places are like that now.
Yeah.
These days, 300, even though the pricing should be coming back down.
It is. I've started to see it drop. I was in Costco for like 120 recently. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's good.
With the PX for the Redbreast, I had bought a bottle in September for, it was like, I think 150, and in December it was 110.
That's good. I mean, not for you,
I mean-
good in general.
Well,
Unless
but
you finished and we're buying
that could-
another.
Yeah, that could also be because the PX went through that iteration where they said they weren't producing anymore. So
Right.
everybody shot their prices up, and then all of a sudden, like 6 months later, they were like, "Oh, it's going to be part of our regular release."
Yeah.
Boom! All of a sudden, they're $99 now.
which is where they were to begin with.
Yep.
Yeah, that 12-year Jameson, it was interesting. I was going into the back of my liquor cabinet, and I actually have a bottle in the back of my liquor cabinet of it.
Uh,
There you go.
Are you anywhere near Houston, Matt?
no, I'm up in the Dallas area.
I'm in
Okay.
California, but I'm telling my
I-
brother because that's staying at the back of the liquor cabinet right now.
Do you have a place
Yeah,
in Houston? Sue?
I'll stick with the
No,
Redbreast
I occasionally
27.
go to Houston for work, so if it came to it and you're near Houston, I could bring out. I think I have 2 or 3 bottles here. If I can't get any more from there, I
Well,
can bring them
if
out.
we wait till summertime, my daughter's moving to Houston in July, so I'll be down there then.
Okay, well, I'll reach out if I'm going back for work next year. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few places that have it in the U.S., but they're all 300 plus. That's a tough
Yeah,
one.
I haven't seen the Jameson. I have a little bit of the gold left too, which I may finish soon. But I always like that one, but not for that price point either.
No, I didn't think it was worth getting it at 300.
But again, it makes you remember, like, so back in like 2012, Jameson Gold was kind of like, wow, I'm living well tonight, drinking, because you didn't have. I mean, so some of you may have been doing the Irish whiskey thing back then, but it was slim pickings. And Cooley was kind of the one where it was like, oh, we could do this, and then it really exploded after that. You had Black Barrel and Yellow Spot, and then John's Lane. So Middleton really started, and then that's what kind of made everyone criticize Bushmills for years because it was kind of like Middleton's putting out all this stuff, Cooley's doing their thing. Dingle came along, and Bushmills was silent, which in a weird way I think has worked out for them because by not releasing things for years, they just were able to build up a really big stock of aged single malts, and now they've been just releasing all kinds of stuff in the Causeway collection and everything. So um it's probably worked out from them in a weird way.
Hey, Alan, I got a question on so on the new release category. What obviously you have to have a cutoff. So
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, Matt, because I have a question for you in relation to this, and it's more for this year.
Uh-huh.
When did Bowan show up at Specs?
About 2 weeks before Christmas.
Okay,
3 weeks before early December.
because it's in Texas at Specs, and it's in some California stores up in like San Fran area. I don't know if it's anywhere else. I haven't seen it. That one surprised me. It just popped up. I was like, whoa, when did? So I was because they didn't make it. They weren't nominated for anything. They would have been.
That's what I was getting at, like when the cutoff is.
Yeah, it's basically around Thanksgiving
Okay.
well, this year we started the voting in mid-November.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like end of October. And typically there aren't a ton of releases at the end of the year, but this year they were like, I was a little surprised too when the Jameson triple chestnut showed up.
Oh, that's actually really good.
Same thing. It was like, why are they releasing all this stuff now when they are? But I think a lot of it is just the backlog in the system in terms of when it finally came to market. But yeah, so like because I have to start thinking about stuff because I'll forget 7 months later, like when did that come? But it's funny because I cannot find any media release on the Bowen stuff coming to the States. And
I was surprised because before I went to Houston for work, I go to Specs and see what can I buy. And I was surprised to see the Bowen stuff there pleasantly, but I ended up getting Whistler because I had those Bowen releases already.
when was this that you were there?
December. I had to go over for work, so picked up some Balcones and some Whistler.
So technically, we'll see. But I mean, I try to make sure the stuff definitely didn't come until the calendar year, but I might make exceptions depending on maybe it's a lean year for new releases in the States. We'll see. Because the Bowen stuff's good. So, but if I don't include it in the new, at least I
I
know
think
it's
the fair thing is if it wasn't included in 24, you can include it in 25.
yeah. Well,
Missed
and if
it
it came
twice.
out in December, it was after the
Yeah.
cutoff date. I mean, I don't really get into the weeds on that stuff because I don't think people really care. But even if it didn't somehow make well, because there are three of them, I could see them um being in other
It
categories.
depends on your other categories
Well,
because if
right.
it's the best
It'll be,
Madeira or
I
best
would say
PX
it's gonna,
finish,
I know for sure because I already know a couple categories that I'm gonna do because I'm not gonna do Madeira and Port again. And I know what I'm gonna do in their place. So, um, yeah, Bowen will be nominated in 25, but, because it's good stuff. I kind of
Big
hope,
fan of the one.
I hope it comes to, the States. I mean, obviously they've got a big distributor work in Texas because there are more whistlers down in Texas than I've seen
Yep.
anywhere else.
I can get 17 different expressions of the Whistler.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
yeah, and
Single
was-
cast series up the yin yang.
yeah, it's funny how I mean, like the good, the bad, the smoky, never seen that but
and it's always been that way because pre-COVID, when I used to go out there for work, I was able to get the cast strength Whistler. So every time I went out, I'm like, I'm stocking up on that because it's one of my favorite whiskeys. Obviously, it's no longer there, but you used to always be able to get their stuff in Texas.
yeah,
I hear Texas is just one of the easiest states to bring anything in from the outside.
really.
Yeah, which is like it's kind of across all realms. Bourbon, I mean, they just get because of the demand is so high with bourbon, but with Scotch, rums, like they get a lot of stuff that nobody else gets. Especially Specs, like whatever relationship Specs has with their distributors, they just
They are
own.
good.
Yeah, they get some stuff. They get some stuff that you don't see elsewhere.
Oh yeah, and they get single casts that nobody
Yeah.
else gets that are pretty amazing single casts too.
Yeah, which is pretty good for I mean, what do they have? Three locations?
Specs? Oh God, no, a ton. There were
Oh,
three
they have more than
within
that now?
driving distance of my workplace, but no, there's a lot of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they've grown significantly.
Okay.
Although not being able to buy spirits on a Sunday is something I couldn't get used to.
Yeah,
That's weird.
that's a problem.
I know on a football Sunday.
And it's funny you say that because for the longest time in Massachusetts, you couldn't buy booze on Sunday, and I never really thought it was a big deal. You learn to plan accordingly.
Yeah.
Correct. If I'm flying in on a Sunday for work, that's
Well,
my
yeah,
day.
if you're a visitor
Yeah.
coming from a place elsewhere, yeah, that could be a problem. But
Yeah, it was the same in Ireland growing up. You'd Good Friday and you'd people complain each year, I can't buy alcohol. It's like, did you not buy it yesterday? This
Yeah.
happens every year. You know it's coming.
Wait, what was number 2?
Bushmill 16-year-old.
That was the Bushmill 16.
what were you were falling behind there?
Yeah, I was falling behind hard. And I was only drinking like partials too. I was getting just enough, but because I was trying to really just get into the notes and what, because some of them I hadn't tried before, so I didn't get a chance to. So I was,
Yeah, I guess what of those 6 that were part of the tasting lineup, what did people like the best?
Boringly Redbreast and then the Bushmills.
Yeah. Same.
Okay.
Agree.
Bushmills for me.
Yeah. I like I don't have it a lot, but every time I have it, I love it, is the Method and Madness single grain. Something about that one. So I don't know what it is about that Spanish oak, but
what number was that one?
3.
Number 3. Yeah, that one was tasty. I actually was not a big fan of the Dingle. I did not like that one.
Yeah.
Or I would say not that I don't hate it, but I thought you could taste the quality of the distillate, but the way the finish came off, I just was like, eh.
Yeah, it's funny that finish because I've done a number of master classes with Dingle.
Yeah.
And so I had tried a lot of the Celtic Wheel lineup before they were released. So I
Yeah.
remember trying that one, back in 23, and looking forward to it. Oh, great, because I like that finish and other stuff.
Yeah.
And being like, oh, it's not.
Yeah.
And again, and when I've done the lineup again, I just did it in December, the whole lineup again. And that was in my bottom few in terms of rankings.
Yeah.
Again, I don't dislike it, but it doesn't stand up as well against
Yeah.
the other 8. I
Some
think
of those other Dingles were
the
really
single
good.
pot stills are really good in the lineup. I think the Widow Jane one's good. Um, yeah, the Muscatel, and I even like the other one I didn't really love the first time was the Port, and that one I liked a lot better the second time through. So,
Mm.
um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to Dingle putting out a pot still core expression this year.
Has that hasn't come to the States yet, has it?
It doesn't exist yet, so no,
Okay. Yeah.
no. So everything they've
Oh,
done,
for a core expression.
yeah, everything they've done pot still has been limited stuff or part of a series. So they have enough stock now. So I guess the only thing holding it up is the stupid labeling approvals.
Hey guys, man, Allan, man, I appreciate you for doing this, and it was good seeing all you guys. But I got to run. I got to start dinner.
Take
All
care.
right. Thanks for joining. Good seeing you.
Appreciate you guys. Go Irish.
All right, take it easy.
Oh, Irish.
Palm opened up his Redbreast 18. Nice.
Yeah. I wish I could get. I need to get one. That's
It's very nice. It just becomes a balance between do you
yeah.
get that or the 21? It's
Well, the price difference is significant. I do love the 21, and I'm almost done with mine, but yeah, that extra 100 and like 30, $40.
is that here or ordering online? Because I didn't think there was that much of a difference between them.
In US,
Yeah.
yeah.
My recommendation to any Redbreast or almost Middleton in general would be don't buy Middleton in the US.
Yeah.
It's amazing how even with shipping costs, it's generally cheaper. Same thing with Bushmills for that matter. Like you can get Bushmills 21 and have it shipped from Ireland for cheaper than you can buy it in a store here.
I'd love to know where you're getting the Bushmill 16 for 100 because the cheapest I see it is 140.
Um, yeah, well, I saw it recently on sale for like 104 or something just
Okay.
last week, and I was like, oh, but actually I did because I only had probably half a bottle of that, and I was a little worried because I wanted to include it in the lineup. So I bought another bottle and I had it shipped, and I got it for like 90 in
Yeah.
Ireland. And with shipping, it was still cheaper than
From where'd you order from? Irish malts?
um I can't remember because I did so much ordering in December. I was ordering from everybody. I had an order from James Fox, Irish Malts, and a couple other places. And like those of you who do dry January, I tend to do no bottle purchase January. So I stockpile in December.
Since my dry January began, I've had one shipment from Celtic Whiskey Shop and 2 from Irish Whiskey Auctions, with another arriving tomorrow. So
There you
you
go.
have to get me.
Yeah. I have not bought anything yet, but we're only about, 12 days into the year, so I don't know if we'll see.
Yeah, 260. That would be an awesome price for the 21. That is delicious.
Yeah, I find Bushmills is the one you can really get really cheap pricing if you like some of the German sites and UK and stuff like that. You can find stuff you can't get here as well as the core stuff, and it's a lot cheaper for those that are Bushmills fans. Because I think you can't find the 21 here for like less than 250.
Yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
can get it for less than 200,
Even
overseas.
three, even 350. I think you're hard pressed unless it's an old bottle. But anything released like 23, 24, those are all like 350, 400.
So
Yeah,
by
grab.
comparison, Irish malts have the 21-year-old Bushmills for 163.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. It's and then
That's wild.
even if you pay $40 in shipping, it's still a lot cheaper than buying it here. So yeah. So it's why it helps. It helps if you know, like, there are certain things to buy in certain places.
And I should point out that Irish malts have 20% off international shipping till the end of today. So if people are interested, you can get a deal on shipping as well.
They have what on shipping?
20% off shipping.
Yeah.
That was the email.
I didn't put that out there because generally what I found is unless you're buying something one bottle really cheap, the 10% IWSA discount on the whiskey is better than the 20% on the shipping.
Sometimes they let you stack, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. They seem to be getting better about not letting you do both.
I know. I've been quite disappointed.
Wait,
But it's
how do
still
I find
bad.
the code to get the 10% on the Irish malts? Because I can't seem to log into my account for ISA and I can't reset my password because it doesn't send me the link to my email for some reason.
Uh, I'll I'll work with you to get you back in so you can
Thing.
get all the because you
I
should
got a few things I wanted to order.
because you want to probably be able to access the James Fox discount too.
Ooh, yeah, yeah, that'd be very nice as well. Because they got some goodies too.
But
Because, St. Patty's Day's coming up. I want to have some fresh Irish to crack open.
I would say too, if back on the topic earlier about the cutoffs and new Irish whiskeys, things like that, if any of you guys see stuff, particularly California people,
We don't see anything.
well, you guys get more than most. I would generally speaking, but if you see stuff that pops in that's new, shoot me an email or on the WhatsApp or whatever, just so I'm aware. Because a lot of times I won't even know. Like I know this past year, Ohio got a big push, like the Liberator and some JJ Corey and a few other things. I don't know if like, did anyone ever see the Liberator?
No, I was curious as to where that was available in the States because
Nah,
it's
Ohio
California.
got it. So, um, Ohio did a big Irish push this year. That's one of the state controlled ones.
Yes, I have a bottle of that
Yeah,
from Ohio.
yeah. It's just funny how some like the state control the control states are actually, I think, a little underrated. I know sometimes they get a bad rap, but like New Hampshire just got a ton of stuff, limited editions. So they just got like 5 new Clonakilties, single cast stuff, and they just got a ton of Whistler stuff. So I picked up the Whistler stuff. They got 4 new Whistler stuff. One's a chocolate bitters cask.
Ooh, interesting.
One's a Spanish orange wine cask. Another was a 16-year-old amber Rizzolati's cask, and another was a champagne cask. And they were all different. Like I think one couple of them were like 7 year. They're all cask strength. Um, but yeah, so that was kind of just popped up in the last couple weeks too. So I was a little surprised at how much stuff popped up um, at the end of the year, beginning of the year kind of thing. You don't expect to see a lot then, but
And I'm assuming you rightfully don't care about Total Wine Spirits Direct's own brand releases.
um, if there was something really different, maybe it would that could be like a limited edition, maybe. If you're talking about, I'd be interested just to know.
Okay.
But
Yeah, they've
you're
got a lot
talking
of
about
stuff that years here, but yeah, most of it is just probably West Cork, maybe some Great Northern, but it's stuff you've never heard of before.
Yeah, they do a bunch of tealing stuff. Like it's just funny how the different areas. That's why I like hearing from people around the country because everyone gets their own thing. Like if you're in Chicago, Binny's could easily be renamed Teeling,
Hmm.
because they have just so much Teeling stuff at Binny's that you don't see elsewhere. If you ever hop on their site. Um, it's funny. So I have a friend in Chicago who will go into Binny's and send me pictures because they do their bins and sales. They don't put them on the website. So they were getting, what were they doing the other day? Oh, they had I want to say it was the Ballykeefe single malt for $19.
That's good.
Yeah, they were so I was like, yeah, get me that.
Hmm.
It's their spirit. And for $19, you're giving it away. It's like, I'll give that a whirl. I have their original release pot still, but yeah, so like, but Benny, one of the things I like about Benny's is they keep things moving. A lot of stores will just keep things sitting on the shelves for years. But the problem with Benny's is if you go on their site, you don't see any of those. They don't put those specials on their site. You have to actually be in the store. But anybody pick up anything around the holidays that they tried or opened for the holidays? Worth mentioning?
Nothing new open, so just auction purchases and stuff like that. That'll all wait till after dry January.
So what do you call February? Make up February?
Yeah,
Ah,
I'm trying to think of something somewhat that I can tangentially relate to baseball then to open a bottle.
Yeah, it just could be anything that you have picked up or maybe have sat on for whatever reason.
yeah. I do have I think it's a 1975 Bushmills that I haven't cracked open. Let me see if I can.
Oh, the Millennium Cask one?
Yeah, I think it is a
Yeah.
Millennium.
Yeah, it doesn't have to necessarily be like something super special. It could just be something you bought.
The
Just haven't opened.
Millennium Bushmills. Yep, I have one of those as
Yeah,
well.
but this was a private cask for a store. But yeah.
When I was in Galway last year, we were in O'Connell's and they had a bottle of that behind the shelf. And I just asked, how much is it? The guy's like, let me check. It's like, it's $28. I'm like, oh, yes, please. And a guy sitting beside me at the bar was like, what is that? And should I drink it? I'm like, yes, you should drink that.
Yeah.
There's also a cast strength version of that available, but it came out in either 82 or 84, but it was another Millennium one.
Ah, have not seen that.
Have you cracked open your 1608 that you just got, Ken?
The one that arrived in dry January? No, not just
Okay.
try to trick me. No.
All right.
That'll wait for a while. I had one when it came out originally. It was delicious. I'm looking forward to trying it again. But yeah, auction prices at the moment, if you're buying, seem to be really good.
Well, it's funny when I saw that you had picked that up because I had put aside um, a 50 ml sample of that for you, and just hadn't sent it yet,
Yeah.
But and then I saw you got it. I was like, oh, all right. Well, he beat me
Yep.
to it.
Yeah, my last Irish whiskey auctions were two different power single casks and then that.
Now, were these adding on to your Powers collection, or were they
Oh
different
yeah,
single casks? Okay.
there were ones I don't have already. There was an
Oh, they
18-year-old
were. Okay.
old wooden rectangular box and a 12-year-old with a new cardboard diamond-shaped box.
Well, I do appreciate you attending and coming your silent protest of the lack of Powers representation in the Izzies.
I held out hope for the Legacy Award. I said I'll give Allan the benefit of the doubt and he'll come good at the end, but no.
Yeah,
Sorry.
well,
Just
there's
dry
always
January for nothing.
there's always next year, as they say.
Yeah, yeah. That
Although I
Powers
will,
batch one cast strength, the Powers lane. Oh my, that is
Yeah,
such a good
they're
whiskey.
all good.
Oh man. Well,
yeah,
I've only had the batch one,
the
so, but
problem with
that is a phenomenal whiskey.
No, I mean
uh,
any of the single cast, the Middleton, like the Barrel Club one, every
Ah,
cast strength that I've tasted has been delicious.
mm.
yeah,
Have you had the Whiskey Exchange one by any chance? I was
I
looking
don't
at
And so,
because they have but I don't think it was cast strength, but it was a high ABV that was it was like 50 something. Because I was gonna order something from Whiskey Exchange and I was looking at that, I was like, ooh, I bet you that tastes good
that
too.
probably would be cast strength because everything else seems to be either 46 or what they'll deem as cast strength. But I haven't had a bad one, so I would say go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have we have powers representation next year. I thought of a way to sneak something
This
in
year or 2026?
for 25.
Okay, good.
Um, the problem with powers is just a lot of that stuff you're talking about is just not here.
Hmm.
So I'd either have if I expand to the not in the USA, it's going to get out of control because then you just get people that are nominate stuff that no one's ever had.
Hank's not here, but yes, he would do that.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah. Oh, so it's a small batch for the Whiskey Exchange. It's
Interesting. Okay.
not a single cask. It is a 17-year-old small batch. So that one looked interesting.
yeah,
I'm now at the Whiskey Exchange.
I haven't had that one yet.
Same.
But like you said, there's kind of hard. I don't know if I've had a bad one.
Yeah. And then the Whiskey Exchange, they know how to select their whiskey. I don't think I've had a bad thing from them.
It's also a good thing, like if you're in Ireland and you're traveling, whenever a pub has their own power single cask, you're like, yes, I'll just get that, thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one of my favorites of that is the in Galway, the Garavans.
Yeah.
I think that's the best version. I think that's better than the O'Connell's one. What do you have planned for Burns night, Ken?
So I've got a group of friends over. It'll be a Scotch tasting plus food. We're going to start with Monkey Shoulder because I was given a bottle of that to start off with a blended whiskey. Then we have a sherry cask long row, or sorry, Hazelburn. Then
Ah,
it's
triple distilled.
Yes, then it's going to be a double dessert pairing because I'd heard about two good pairings. One was the Glenmorangie Taste of Forest with a Tunnocks tea cake. The next one was a Springbank 10-year-old with a chunky Kit Kat. So those will be the two dessert tastings. I'm torn on then after that because it'll either be something from the Scottish Malt Whisky Society or a cast strength Imperial, which is a closed distillery, or I recently picked up a cheap bottle of a 1960s Grabby 12-year-old or 8-year-old whiskey. So it'll be one of those three to sort of finish it off.
And this you hosting this?
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll serve it'll be a potato soup, bread, and then fruit, nuts, chocolate, and so on. So it should be fun.
And do you in between courses do you read poetry?
Nah.
No, no. There's some interpretive dance, but no poetry.
Okay.
I looked at doing the Ode to a Haggis, but it was too long to learn it all. So it's like, yeah, no.
That is not easy.
I may print out menus and then I'll just do the Ode to Haggis on the back side of the menu and just give it to people so they can read it if they want.
Yeah. Or find a YouTube clip of somebody saying the whole thing. You can
Yeah,
just
that was
play
my
it
wife's suggestion, but people will get bored and won't listen to it, so they'll start talking. So it's easy
there.
just in the paper.
That's fair.
Yeah, I was gonna say for those people that are, pushing the whole dry January agenda, they don't make it easy between Hot Toddy Day and Irish Coffee Day and Burns Night and New Year's. It's a tough month to try to do dry.
Sorry, New Year's is in December. I don't know what world you're living in, but New Year's Eve is not January.
Well, I consider January 1st a hell of a lot more fun than New Year's personally, because January 1st is usually a nice day of sitting around watching college football bowl games.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, if you're
But,
sensible, dry February, there's only 28 days. You know, you get your best value for doing a dry February.
But no, thanks everyone for jumping on today. I appreciate it. Hope you had fun. Um, we'll do it again. Do it again next year. All right, well, good
Thanks
to see you
again.
guys, and we'll do it again soon.
All right.
Alan.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Alan, thank you very much.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.